Twinkle, twinkle, little star,
He's alive!
Welcome to where the weird ones are.
Every time I speak, I want the truth to come out.
Powerful figures in Hollywood as well as powerful politicians who are in fact not human. They're reptiles or they're lizards or perhaps extraterrestrials.
I don't think it is a human. I think it's a Sasquatch.
Go ahead and run. Run home and cry to mama.
Let's get weird.
What's up, you fucking weirdos? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. My name is Kevin, but you probably already knew that, and if you didn't, now you do. Today's episode is with Stephen and Leslie Shaw. They are husband and wife duo, authors of Who They Are and What They're Up To. Detailing all the research, 20 years or so, that they've been doing on the extraterrestrial phenomena. And Stephen has experienced a lifetime of abductions, high strangeness and whatnot. It's really been following his family, I should say. O'Glegley is an entity that seems to have attached itself to Stephen's family. His parents have had they had experiences. His brother had experiences, and shortly after Stephen and Leslie had gotten together, Leslie started. Well, I think she said that she had two experiences where she just saw a UFO, but they've been researching a lot and they know their shit. They're pretty intelligent, and this was a fantastic conversation. I can't speak highly enough of these two. They were wonderful. They spoke very clear and concise, very articulate with what they were saying, and they got their point straight across as soon as possible. So yeah, I had a lot of fun conversating with them. Now, a good way to support them in their research would be to go buy their book. They'll tell you where you can find it. If you listen to the episode. So, with that being said, April 13th is coming up real quick, everybody. So if you're in the Hamlet, North Carolina, come on down to Encounter Quest on April 13th. Doors open at 9 a.m., I believe. A ton of fantastic speakers. So come hang out, maybe buy some hot sauce. And then June 8th, I'll be at 14 Fest, vending there as well. So if you want tickets to either or, so Encounter Quest is free to the vendor floor, but you got to buy a ticket if you want to hear the speakers. So to get said tickets, go to encounterquest.com. And for tickets for 40 and Fest, head on over to Facebook if you have a Facebook, and go to 40 and Fest, search 40 and Fest, you'll be able to find, or search Paranormal 5 because they're the ones hosting the event. So, and that one is again June 8th, right here in Sanford, Maine. So if you're in the Sanford, Maine area, come on down, say fucking hi. Other than that, if you like today's show, please like, follow, share, subscribe. leave a rating and review. I would greatly appreciate it. I will read said reviews, which I do have a new review that I'm going to read, but I'll read that in episode 104, which comes out in 2 days. So yeah, life is good, man. Life is good. But if you want some merch, where the weird ones are podcast.com. That's where you can find the blog, you can find the merch, you can find the photo gallery of people wearing the merch. And then Patreon, Conspiracy Tuesday number 9 just came out and is on the Patreon. So now there's 2 episodes of Conspiracy Tuesdays out on the Patreon. There's one story time. And you get, if you become a Patreon member, you get a free coffee mug. I have 3 different coffee mugs now. So I'll ask it once you sign up. I'll ask you which one you would prefer, and then I'll send you the preferred coffee mug. So the Patreon's only $5 a month. I feel like it's pretty inexpensive. So I don't know. I made it, so I'm gonna push it. So shameless, I guess. I don't know. I still feel icky, but it's okay. But if you don't want to become a Patreon member, that is totally fine. Will not upset me at all. Because I'm so happy. I'm just happy that you're here to spend the time with me for this. So, and this is, I mean, I do this for fun. If I don't expect money, so it's just something that I like to do. I like to talk to people about this weird shit that seems to happen to a lot of us. So, also, if you are struggling, you're having a hard time with the voices up here, you can dial 988. That's a suicide hotline. You know, if you're having those kind of feelings, please reach out to someone. And if the hotline is the someone that you need, happen to be able to get a hold of, they can help you out with any mental struggles that you are combating. So I just want you to know that I'm happy that you're here. I know that sometimes life can beat the fuck out of us, and it seems pretty hopeless at times, but I promise you there is light at the end of the tunnel. um, out of all the things that God could put on this earth, um, he looked at the land and decided that it needed one of you. So keep on keeping on, um, and know that you're not alone. If you need somebody to talk to, you can always talk to me. With that being said, if you want to be featured on the show to tell your stories, and or if you just need somebody to talk to, it's where the weird ones are at gmail.com, where _ the weird ones are on Instagram, and where the weird ones are on Facebook. And I think that's all I have for today. So why don't we get into today's episode? It's 103, with Leslie and Stephen Shaw, who they are and what they're up to.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Let's get weird. Weird. Get weird.
What's up, party people? Welcome to another episode of Where the Weird Ones Are. I'm so happy to to introduce you to Leslie and Stephen Shaw. They wrote a book together, over 20 years of research. So this should be a pretty good, pretty good and interesting episode. Leslie and Stephen, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, thank you for having us.
Quite well, thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate having these kinds of conversations with and everybody's willingness to come on. Um, time is our most valuable currency, and the fact that you guys are taking the time to come on the show and chat with me, it means a lot to me, and I appreciate it.
That's true for the listeners as well. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, time is a very valuable commodity. We must use it where we have it.
Well spoken, my love.
Yes. If you don't mind, lead us into a little bit about the book real quick.
All right. It's called Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw. It's available on Amazon and Ingram. We also have an Instagram page where we're posting Stephen's family's abduction stories and other weird experiences the family's had, stories in these little series where we release a little bit every day. And also, we're trying to make interesting posts and stuff there too.
And reels too.
And we have friends that have come to us with, I've had this experience. Once they found out you write a book, people come to you with their experiences, and so we're starting to share people's experiences there too. And we'd love to have any of your listeners who've had something they want to talk about. Feel free to find us at it's at leslie.shaw.author, and we're on Facebook at the same handle.
And also we have a
website
right, too,
yeah.
which is whotheyarebook.com.
Mm-hmm. And there we have some blogs and some excerpts and links to our podcast, the podcast we've done.
Oh, yeah. Like all the guest shows, the guesting you've done. Okay.
Yeah, we don't have our own podcast, but
I thought
we've
that's
been
what you were
guests
saying
on
for a second.
Yeah, and we have links to my sister's. Also,
yes, and his sister's a ghost hunter in northern England, and on at our page you can find links to her page as well. It's at Ghostly Locations.
Nice. You guys should go check that out real quick. Go check out their Stephen's sister, and definitely check out the book. So it's based on 20 years of research, correct? And your own experience.
Yes.
Is the whole thing the research, or is it your experiences and research?
That's a very good question, Kevin. It goes back to my being 3 years of age, and really it goes back to 3 generations on my side of the family, the Rowe, the Shaw, and the Newmans. So when you're really looking at as far as the motivation and the reasons why we wrote the book, it really goes back to my wanting to find answers, and also, just knowing the family history.
And we began the book with our personal experiences just to give people a frame of reference for what we're about and where we come from.
Yes.
But really the book is more about our theories, as that was our 20 years of research, our theories as to who is flying the UFOs in our skies and what their motivations are and where they're hiding and so on and so forth. That was what we promised on the back of the book. The blurb said, we tried to deliver,
We're very science and fact oriented because
right.
I was, did 6 years of military duty from 80 to 86, and very science oriented because I was a doctor for 20 years of Chinese medicine. So we're just basically looking at what the facts that were being presented versus what made sense and what didn't make sense. And we actually were kind of surprised about what we found.
And my background is I'm more the writer in the family. I was a journalist for 18 years. I still work for the paper doing copy editing and page layout, but I'm semi-retired now, which gave me some time to write a book. And but like I say, the beginning of the book is our personal experiences, and they're quite extensive, actually. Stephen has seen 5 UFOs, and I've seen 2, and my 2 were his 4th and 5th because we were together at the time. And Stephen, his whole family kept having these bizarre experiences for just years and years and years, and we weren't sure what exactly was going on, whether it was a haunting or whatever, but it would follow the family to other locations. No matter where they moved, the phenomenon followed them. So it was, hauntings tend to more be location driven. They're fused to a location, but in this case, it was definitely following the family. And then one time, his brother Philip saw a gray alien in his room before his blackout. Most of these experiences, you see something with family would see something bizarre and then immediately black out, and there'd be 3 hours of missing time after it. And we've come to understand that is the signature of the alien abduction phenomenon, as far as how they cover their tracks with memory altering
and just for some continuity, this phenomena has followed me to at least 6 different houses.
Yeah.
And also the Shaw, the Rowe, and the Newman family, from Germany to England to California, and even to Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, which is a whole nother
that's
situation.
Right. Doug's experience was in
yes.
in another country altogether.
I was taught from being a young, very, very young, about from the age of 3, that we had this family spirit guide protector called O'Glegley that had been protecting and helping the family, that would show up at different times to different people. And so I just grew up in a family that came from World War II England, that grew up in Manchester and Oldham, that grew up during the, as kids, during the really, really terrible time of all the bombings. And so, my parents, very, very no-nonsense, conservative Brits. And so I grew up here in Los Angeles, actually in Woodland Hills, which is in the San Fernando Valley. And it was just taken as a given that we had this helper, this spirit guy called O'Glegley.
They're a very psychic bunch, his family. The whole family. Stephen is incredibly psychic. He reads my mind constantly. And we think that actually is one of the criteria for the alien abduction phenomenon. We think they're drawn to families that are maybe more, have their chakras open more and have some spirituality kind of thing.
That can literally hear on more than one frequency. For instance, let's say right now we're at 30 to 40 cycles per second in the brain, because we're all on beta wave frequencies. So, but if you can slow your brain down by doing things like Tai Chi or meditation, then you can hear maybe 93.5 and 93.1. So literally it's the ability to communicate. And you'll find out in our book that we have reasons why we've come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. That's super interesting, and I think so. Tai Chi, you've been training in Tai Chi, or you did train, or right? Correct.
Yeah.
I still do train in it, not as much as I used to. I started when I was 17, and it was one of those things that just made absolute sense to me. And luckily, there's that old saying that when the student's ready, the teacher appears. And in my case, that was true. My teacher was Bob Davis. He was studying to be a chiropractor, and he had done a lot of dance, and he was like one of these kind of heavy guys that could move very lightly, and that could actually throw his chi. And so I know for a fact, I've done it myself, and I felt it from him first. And so chi energy is real, and the practices are real.
Yes, as a beginner, I was doing the practice for a while with Stephen when I first met him. And as a beginner, I didn't feel it. But then after doing it for about 6 months, sure enough, you'd feel this palpable ball of energy that you could move and throw around. It really is there. I was surprised to discover it really is true.
The teachings are actually real. It's something that we have as human beings. It's both simple, but it takes diligence. You have to like practice it. You actually have to do the work. It's not just something that like with Reiki where that you're giving it by a master. No, you actually have to do the work. And it's amazing. Like there was one time I just decided to do Tai Chi in my room when I was 19 for about 2 hours. And I decided to do the practices, and you're supposed to feel like this like warm water bubbling up through your arms into your hands, and sure enough, that's exactly the way it felt. And then I had this ball of energy between my hands that was, they called it like the moon. You're holding the moon, and then your arms are supported by the sun, and you're in a horse stance, which is like, you have your legs bent, and they're spread about like shoulder width apart,
like you're in a horse saddle, like,
right? And it became, they say you're supposed to have like this rod going from your sacrum down into the ground, and literally it became to where it was effortless. It was absolutely effortless, where I could stay there forever I wanted, and the whole room became filled with, like, I could feel literally the air particles, and this ball was literally like I was holding a small, like a soccer ball, and that was being supported by like a hippity hop ball type of thing for my gut. And I thought, oh my God, now I understand why, about chi, because it's absolutely real. And then one time I had my teacher, he actually did a movement called brush, knee, and push, and he was a little bit upset because a couple of the students had quit the class, and he just hit me from about 4 feet away with this pushing motion from his right hand, and it knocked me back
and
a
real
couple
blast
feet.
of chi energy.
It was just it's wonderful that these teachings that these masters have written in these books, that if you practice them, they actually are real. I mean, it still blows my mind to this day. I mean, it's easy, but it takes practice.
Hey, what are you up to?
Oh, hi. I'm listening to this awesome podcast.
Ooh, I love finding awesome new podcasts. What is it about?
Well, it's about a bunch of things. Sometimes history, sometimes hauntings, sometimes it's spooky, and sometimes it's funny, but it's always interesting.
Ooh, okay, that sounds great. What's special about it?
Well, each week, Celine picks a topic and reads it, and
Wait, what?
Matt creates a pairing of a treat and a drink to go with this peculiar tale.
Wait.
And they talk about it, and they joke about it.
Hold on.
And sometimes they have guests and have even more fun.
Wait a second.
What?
That's our podcast.
Yeah, you're right.
Why are you listening to our podcast?
Well, we're heading into the long dark of winter, and that can make some people feel kind of isolated, and listening to Peculiar Pairings is a great way to feel like you're hanging out with good friends at the push of a button.
Well, that actually sounds really nice. Kind of sounds like everyone should be listening to Peculiar Pairings.
I couldn't agree more.
So if this sounds like it's piqued your interest, you should search Peculiar Pairings podcast on your favorite podcasting platform today.
Yeah, we're everywhere. Come check it out.
Find us. We're there.
Yeah.
And then Stephen was a very fit young man who was very pure. He wasn't sexually active in his late teens. And I think that what they really are after when they abduct people is sperm and eggs and genetic material and blood samples. When they take people, they take their samples. And I think in Steve's case that, he wasn't polluting his body with drugs or alcohol or anything like that. And was eating very well and taking exercise and very good care of himself. And I think that made him particularly, during his year when he was 18 years old, they tended to was the year they preyed on him most, we believe.
Between 18 and 23.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Quick question before I start asking you about your experiences. Did the meditation with the Tai Chi, did that come easy to you? Because I gotta tell you, I've been trying to meditate for like the past 3 years, and I get like 5 minutes into it, and I'm just like, I can't do it because I can't
It is
shut my
hard. It's
brain
harder
off.
than people realize. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
meditating itself, I find to be kind of boring and hard. But they call one of the ways they call Tai Chi, they call it moving meditation.
Yes, and you do get in the same kind of alpha state while you're doing Tai Chi as you do when you're doing chanting.
The beauty about Tai Chi is that every movement is combined with a certain breath, either an inhale or an exhale, and you have to move from the spine. And the idea is always breathing through the nose with the tongue against the upper palate, and inhale and the exhale. You bring the chi up the spine on the inhales and then down in the front on the exhales. So the thing is, for me, like if I were just to like say have to like just do meditation just by itself, I probably would have given it up. But Tai Chi is so much more beautiful, and it's so much more. It's also mildly aerobic, and it definitely helps you to be able to move faster, because you have to, like they say, you have to learn to be able to crawl before you can walk, and walk before you can run. So the fact of the matter is that the balance, and it also slows down the brainwave frequency to at least an alpha state, at least to between 7 to 11 cycles per second. So you're literally in moving meditation.
And it serves to vibrate the chakras as well.
Yes.
And so you actually start reaping some of the benefits of like Kundalini raising energy work, like meditation, deep meditation, and chanting are ways of opening your chakras and raising the Kundalini energy. And he did Tai Chi for so many years that he was very receptive to it when we actually began doing some of this work. And he was able to almost immediately astral project again. And me too. It happened pretty fast for me too. And, he became even more psychic. It was ridiculous. He was reading whole sentences out of my mind constantly.
Yeah.
And when we gave up the practice, I gave it up because it was actually a little creepy after a while.
She was hearing voices that weren't there, like, during, awaking, like.
Yeah, I'd be at work and I'd hear somebody speak right behind me, and I'd flip around and there's nobody there. And I realized they call it clairaudience, and you're hearing into like the astral realm or something like that. And I just felt it was just too creepy. And so I gave up the practices. And for me, the abilities that I gained while I was doing them faded away. But for Stephen, he was never really, those doors never really closed. And I think it has to do with how psychic his family is. So he had a much more psychic starting point. But also I think it may have something to do with this abduction phenomenon. It seems like they're almost like they're waiting for him just on the other side of the veil. And whenever, he enters the astral state, not every time, but frequently, there'll be a being there with him that is, menacing him or
there to greet me.
Yeah, or just looks staring menacingly at him. And we just really think I've been researching with people who are older, who used to be abduction victims. I think at a certain point in time, they stop taking them physically, and they'll start taking their children instead, and then eventually the grandchildren. But they seem to keep their mental connection with their abductees forever. Whitley Strieber was talking about it the other day on television. I was watching an interview with him, and he was saying that he's got long-term kind of effects from it, and they still continue to communicate with him. And I believe that that's true. And so they're still influencing the human race, but on after a while, they don't need to take you physically because you're not as viable anymore.
Do you guys know the supposed treaty that Truman signed to allow, I think, an alien entity to abduct Americans?
Yes, but it was not Truman. It was Eisenhower.
Well, actually, Truman started it, but Truman was Majestic 12.
Yeah, Truman was president during the Roswell incident.
Yep.
And was right after the Roswell incident. I mean, literally 1.5 months later that he assigned the Majestic 12 to research and identify the threat, and also to basically sit on it, try and keep it out of the public domain, and keep people from finding out about it and panicking. Right. And Project Blue Book was initiated right after that as well. But Truman was on his way out, and they had quite a different, when the presidents trade, positions. There's an education. There's an educational period in between, where they hand over the reins to the new. They had quite a different handing over of reins this time. They had to deal with the entire UFO phenomenon, that had it landed in their lap. And then in 1952, there was the incidents where UFOs buzzed the Capitol complex. They did it on one weekend, and then through the week there were several more incidents of it, and then the following weekend it happened again. They were definitely trying to get the attention of the Capitol and the White House. And it was shortly after that, supposedly, that Eisenhower met with the Nordic aliens. And, he couldn't stop them from taking people anyway.
Right.
So he tried to negotiate, I think, maybe the best deal he could. He said, okay, well, we'll keep your secret for you as long as you give us some of your technology. And, you can go ahead and abduct people when you need to. And
or play around with their cows.
Yeah, and as many cow lips as you need,
There's a wonderful movie out there about 35 years ago called Sneakers that you may or may not have seen. Dan Aykroyd's in that movie. He's kind of like the conspiracy guy.
Conspiracy guy, yeah.
And so there's this one clip which is kind of so funny that he says, and then Ike says, like, you take all the cow lips you want, just give us your technology. And it's actually
and we think that it actually really did.
It's probably not too far from the truth.
But he was negotiating with the Nordic aliens, and I think that's critically important because I think the Nordic aliens are actually breeding the Greys and using them as like a slave sort of race. You know what I mean? They're always described as emotionless automatons, just doing their taking their samples and putting people back. They're never confused about what to do next. They don't ever look around wondering what to do next. They're just very goal driven, and they're completely emotionless from what we understand from people's testimony that we researched. And that, to me, sounds like we think that in the ancient days, they may have been trying to use humans as slaves, but we don't make good slaves.
No, humans make terrible slaves.
We're a willful bunch.
We're too curious, and we just don't want to take orders.
Yeah.
I saw that when I was going through boot camp in 1980. You'd be surprised that you got 88 guys in a company, right? And you always got those 2 or 3 or 4 guys that just won't look at the bigger picture.
Yeah,
that if you don't do things right, we're going to run an extra 5 miles. But just because you're being a jerk, that you want to have your own way. Well, great. Okay, you're going to get a marching party or a short tour, or you're going to make us all have to suffer because you don't want to basically look at the bigger picture.
Yeah. So, would you like to hear some UFO stories or
yes,
Stephen's abduction stories first?
Yeah, I would love to hear Stephen's first ever abduction story.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, okay. Let me start with the one that happened when I was 3. When I was around 3, this happened several times. I would be awakened in my bed, and I would be awakened by this invisible being that would be like a cat. It felt like a cat, but it wasn't a cat, and it would be jumping on my chest and my stomach to wake me up, and it was like playful. It wasn't menacing, but it was just like there was a cat there just jumping on my chest and my stomach.
Except it was invisible, and it kept happening a lot, right?
It happened several times.
Yeah.
I don't recall any blacking out as far as that goes.
But he was only 3, so
yeah. But
you know.
but the next thing that happened, that where I did have a blackout, I was 9 years old. I was sleeping in the top of a bunk bed. My brother was 3 years old at the time, and he was on the bottom. And I was awakened by this strange sound that I didn't recognize. It was not the dog. I recognized the sound of the dog, so I climbed out of the bunk bed and I started walking down the hallway, which was dimly lit. And I remember my heart pounding like I was in adrenal phase, okay? And my eyes were wide and I was breathing kind of heavy, and I was certainly awake. I wasn't in any type of astral state or something like that. And I was walking down not knowing what I was going to see in the living room. And just as I was about ready to turn into the living room, I just go blank, go black. Now, a couple hours later, I find myself back in my bunk bed, sleeping naturally, normally, having no clear idea of what happened at all. It might have been 2 or 3 hours, I'm not sure. But that was one of the instances. Around a couple of years later, my brother, around about the age of 5 or 6, he started sleeping in the closet. And I asked Phil, why are you sleeping in the closet? What is it going on? He said, well, I'm afraid of the little men that come in the night. I said, oh, because I had actually seen these little men. For me, once I saw them, they're kind of shimmery. And there's like 4 or 5 of them, and they look kind of like garden gnomes, okay, which is kind of funny to say, but then again, I don't know what happened after that, whether I turned over and went back to sleep. But my brother, he was afraid of these little guys or these little men as he saw them, and he definitely spent at least 2 years sleeping in the closet.
One thing we discovered with our research is this shimmery quality is evidence of memory tampering, in my experience. So we still think these are gray alien abduction incidents, but that they tamper with the memory later and turn themselves into gnomes instead of gray aliens. Or people, I've heard people's all different kind of things. Like one mother-in-law story from his mother was that she saw them as little Chinese men,
about 5 feet tall.
But this shimmery quality is frequently described by the family when they're seeing something very bizarre that doesn't make any sense. And frequently it's sign of that.
Let me fast forward now.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, dear.
Okay.
Can I just ask one question real quick?
Go ahead, sure.
When you say shimmery, do you mean like shiny, or do you mean like a cloak, like it's not there but you can see an outline?
Shimmery, more like kind of blurry
or glittery.
Blurry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not okay. It's not like like having a white aura around them or anything like that. It's more like that, kind of just a little bit blurry, but with high intensity color. Okay. So, but anyways, I'll fast forward to like the first UFO that I saw when I was 11 years old. This was in the San Fernando Valley at the house I was living in. It was a large orange sphere, this about 9:30 at night, that was going from south to north, and it was just moving just in a very, very horizontal direction. Didn't have any running lights or anything like that, and it was pretty big. And I just watched it out the front door. And the next day I called Griffith Park Observatory, and they said, well, they didn't have any sightings because their telescopes aren't aimed that way. They're aimed toward the moon and that kind of stuff. But it was, there was a time there in Woodland Hills and Tarzana where there were quite a number of sightings of UFOs. I wasn't the only one, but that was my first one. Now, when I fast forward to a week that happened, that my father, my mother, my brother, and my sister and myself,
the whole family really experienced
stuff within a week's period of time. Wow. In 2 different locations.
I call it the weirdest week.
It's in our it's in the book and
on our Instagram page. But.
So anyway, the first thing that happened, this was in January of 1979 when I was 18. My father, his closet doors opened and closed on him during the middle of the night, And I found out about it because when I met him for breakfast, because we were both, cabinet makers. My dad was a master cabinet maker, and he told me about it, and I kind of like shrugged it off, said, "Oh, sure, Dad, Oh, yeah, right, yeah, your closet doors open and closed. You must have been dreaming."
By themselves, yeah.
Right. So the next night, I was really quite, I was studying Tai Chi, and I was reading a lot of Paramahansa Yogananda's stuff, and I had this little book called Metaphysical Meditations that had all this really great stuff in it. And I just thought on a whim, said, maybe I let my dad read some of this stuff. So about 9 o'clock at night, I left my room and I went into the living room and said, "Hey, Dad, you should really read this stuff. It's really profound." And about 20 or 30 minutes later, he came into my room, knocked on the door, and said, "Stephen, I must be hearing things." I said, "Well, what, Dad?" I said, "I'm hearing the silver bell inside the wall by the fireplace." So I said, "Okay." So I came out, and sure enough, it sounded like somebody was chiming a silver bell, which is a very specific sound, inside the wall by the fireplace. It wasn't in the fireplace, it was in the wall. So then we decided, okay, we'll get my sister. My sister is 5 years younger than me, so she was 13 and really didn't want to have anything to do with this stuff at that time in her life. And so she said, "Yeah, that's a silver bell."
But you couldn't mistake it.
You couldn't mistake it. And we banged on the wall. We tried to, look at the chimney and tried to make sense of it, and there was no making sense of it. Went on for about 15 minutes, and then it stopped. The next day, we got a call from my mom, who was living in the house that with my brother that we were building by ourselves, because we were, cabinet makers and carpenters. That was 350 miles away up in the lower Sierras of California. And apparently at that same time, my mom answered the phone, and my brother said that the phone never rang. But my mom said she heard like a bell, and she picked up the phone, and some entity on the other end said something along the lines of, "I am the invisible on Beachy," whatever the heck that means. But my brother, but this was happening at the exact same time that we had the silver bell happening at the Fallbrook house. Now, the next day, I was sleeping in my regular bedroom on the bottom bunk this time, and I was awakened by this whizzing sound that was like a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And I turned over to look down the hallway, and there was like nothing there, no bugs or whatever, and I decided to try and go back to sleep. So I rolled over on my left-hand side, and then from the base of the bed, from the foot of the bed, there were two distinct pushes, just kind of gentle, like push, push. Now, living in Southern California, first of all, you're going to think maybe it's an earthquake. Okay, been through earthquakes, so I thought, well, trying to make some kind of logical sense out of it. And so I continued to try to go back to sleep, and then there's two more pushes that are a little stronger, and then after that, even stronger. Now, at this point, I'm getting kind of annoyed and scared. And then I get three distinct taps on my right shoulder, just like somebody's with an index finger around my deltoid area, mid-deltoid, going tap, tap, tap. And at this point, I'm scared and really annoyed. So I rolled over and I said, "What?" And there's nothing there, and then I black out.
Except before that, you said you could still feel a presence.
I could still feel a presence, but I couldn't see it. But then I blacked out. So the next night, I decided, I did not want to sleep in that room. I thought, okay, whatever is happening, I don't want to be sleeping in that room. So I decided to sleep on the couch in the living room. And I just went to bed in my work clothes from the day before. And I woke up, this is January in Southern California, so I woke about 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. It was definitely dark. And I looked at my piano because I'm a musician. I was thinking about what I was going to play that day, and listened to the fountain in the other room, and I was certainly awake. And from behind me, from the front door, this entity, tall, skinny, blue-white entity, which I couldn't see because I was facing face up away from it, this entity came. It was like standing, floating. It was about 6 to 7 feet tall, and it approached me in about a second and a half to 2 seconds, stopped by my right side. The whole room was filled with this blue-white light, this strong blue-white light. It bent down to my right side of my body, toward my ear, and my whole right side of my body went completely numb. Not in a scary way, but it went where I couldn't move. And it said to me in my ear, not inside my head, but in my ear, said, "Hi, Steve." It was not either male or female. I could not tell what it was. But part of me was thinking, oh, I'm going to see the family spirit guide called O'Glegley that some people had seen. So part of me was like, oh, man, I get to meet the family spirit guide. The other half of me was saying, hey, dude, you can't move. You are basically immobilized. So I was 50-50, like excited and 50-50 scared. So anyway, I was immobilized for about, I'd say maybe 10-15 seconds. And then the being lifted back up and then went back out the front door, taking the light with it. And in the book, I thought I told my dad about it right away, but I cannot remember what happened.
We since think that perhaps there's some missing time there.
I think I blacked out. But the thing that was the most amazing part is 6 hours later, it was 11:30. I was getting hungry for lunch, and I said, Dad, I'll go down to Jack in the Box to go get some food. So I reached into my right-hand side pocket and pulled out some coins, all American coins, 1979 normal American coins, and all the coins were magnetized. I could pick up the coins with each other. They were just, they were magnetic.
They were all little magnets, yeah.
They're all little magnets.
And that's supposed to be impossible. American coins are specifically designed to not become magnetized.
And this is
so
6
they can
hours.
go in vending machines.
This is 6 hours after it happened. So whatever had affected me. Now, the last thing that happened was that, which I have no memory whatsoever, my dad was awakened in the middle of the night, and his bedroom was across the hallway from mine, and he woke up around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and he saw this intense blue-white light that was coming from my room,
spilling out of the door.
And he was going to get up to look at it because he was getting really concerned about this stuff. So he was going to get up, and he heard in his head a voice say, "Go back to sleep, Jeffrey. Don't worry about it. Nothing to see here." And consequently, he went back to sleep. So that was one really weird week.
And then Philip, these things do tend to come in clusters. Stephen's brother Philip one time told me about his. He had 3 incidents in
totally different house.
And at the Sonora house, the northern house, and he was asleep. He was asleep in his bedroom when he was awakened to two bright white lights right outside his bedroom. And his bedroom was on kind of a slope. And so the lights being level with his bedroom would have been about 40 feet above the ground. And as he was staring at them, he was trying to figure out what they were. And then he goes blank and doesn't remember a thing. And then the next night, he was laying in bed and he heard a scrabbling sound down below him. And he thought, oh, it's one of the cats. So he reached down to pet the cat. And instead, a hand grabs his arm like that. And he, immediately blacks out. And then the third night is where he saw the gray alien in his room.
A tall gray.
A tall gray, the 6 foot, he described it. So one of the taller gray aliens in his room, and then he blacked out again.
This happened when he was about 16 years of age.
Yes,
too.
so that's what we surmised. We finally figured out what's going on, was that finally someone in the family remembered seeing an actual gray alien. And we've tried to do hypnosis to break through Stephen's blocks, memory blocks, but we have yet to succeed with that. We're still trying. And if we get through those blocks, we'll write another book about that.
So it sounds like your brother had more terrifying encounters.
Well, I've had my share, believe me.
Yeah, but he was truly traumatized by the experience. He ended up not being a normal person through his whole life. He was a brilliant man. He could teach. He was teaching calculus, for jollies, but he was always kind of emotionally stunted. He never really had a family or a girlfriend or any. He became kind of a miser and a hermit in his later life, and very paranoid. And eventually, he ended up taking his life. He killed him. He shot his mother, killed her, and then himself.
And killed his cats first.
Yeah, on his 51st birthday, you said, or 50th birthday?
Yeah, December 1st, 2017.
And that was a terrible tragedy. We'd just lost Stephen's father 4 months before that. We think that the loss of his father kind of unbalanced his already unbalanced self, perhaps, to over the brink. And it was quite the tragedy.
Yeah, I lost 75% of my family in about 4 months.
4 months, yeah. So Stephen is his last, his sister is his last surviving immediate family member. But we think it's a very traumatic experience, and some people get PTSD for their whole lives from it. So it's not fun. I don't recommend it,
Yeah.
And I think me personally, I've had a lot of weird stuff happen to me, but none of it has been alien, UFO, or abduction related. So far, I'm in the clear.
So far, so
I have
good.
yet to have any kind of sighting, so I'm pretty happy about that. But I did see a light in the sky the other day, but it could have just been a random light because it just was in the sky and it went just below the tree line, like right at the time that I happened to be looking at the sky. So it could have just been a plane.
You didn't get a real good look at it then either, right?
No, I just knew it was a light. That's it.
On my first UFO, Stephen, of course, when he married me, he told me all about his experiences, and I was a dutiful wife. I believed him,
95%.
But there's when you don't experience yourself, there's all that little kernel of doubt sometimes, right? But then that day came where I finally saw my first UFO, and that the doubt was gone. Suddenly, I was a full believer myself, and that's kind of about that time is when I thought about just beginning an inkling of writing a book about it, and that was in 2005, so almost 20 years ago. And I was driving home at night with Stephen, and we were heading west on the 29 Palms Highway in Joshua Tree, headed towards our Yucca Valley home. And up in the sky in front of us, there was a white light in the sky. And as you know, a white light in the sky can be any number of things, right? But it just was getting brighter and brighter and just hovering there. And it didn't have the running lights like a plane has. And then suddenly, it took off over the northern horizon and gone in a quarter of a second, I would say. It had to have been moving at 20,000 miles an hour if I were going to hazard a guess for how fast. And that's when you know that you're looking at a UFO, because a light in the sky can be any number of things. It could be a Chinese lantern or a plane that's running lights are broken or
helicopter.
Something. Any number of things. But when it takes off at 20,000 miles an hour at speed too, and it didn't ramp up slowly to that fast. It just suddenly was going 20,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, we both saw it at the same time, and we were both.
Yeah. Like, whoa, there's my first. Yeah. Wow. and then Stephen one time saw it.
How did that feel when you saw you first? How did it feel when you saw that for the first time?
I was stunned and amazed and kind of excited because I had always, listening to Stephen's stories about it, I sort of was anxious to see one. I really wanted to someday see one, and there it was. It's not a common occurrence. I'm 64 years old and I've only seen 2 in my whole life, but it was finally my turn, And then Stephen saw a USO for his second UFO experience, which I thought was very interesting. Tell him about that, dear.
Oh, that was about 2004. I had dinner at the Chart House, which is right on the coast in Malibu. And I remember it was October because it was the playoffs, and the Boston Red Sox were playing the New York Yankees. So I was still commuting back and forth from Woodland Hills to Yucca Valley as far as being an acupuncturist, because I was a state licensed acupuncturist for 20 years. So a lot of my patients didn't want to give me up, but I didn't want to give up the patients either. So anyway, so after the dinner, I went out and I asked the valet to get my car, and he brought the car, and we both looked out and we saw this white UFO, or this white object, come out of the ocean and just hover like maybe, I don't know, maybe 200 feet above the ocean, and do a couple of weird movements, and then go just zooming off to the north.
Not just weird movements, but impossible movements.
Well, yeah,
things that our planes can't do, you know.
And I said to him, I said, "You saw that, right?" He said, "Oh yeah, I saw it." So I had a witness for that one. So that was quite interesting, to say the least.
So after our first UFO sighting together, we began doing our research. We began researching, and right away we noticed that UFO research and UFO theories and UFO facts were not lining up. They weren't making sense with each other. For instance, the theory was that aliens are coming from distant star systems, but then you find out they're reported 10,000 times a year, every year, worldwide. And we figure that sightings and reporting is only at about 10%. So really, we're seeing these craft 100,000 times per year, every year, for maybe hundreds of years, going way back, right? So it just didn't make sense that they're coming here from distant star systems. Even if it was easy, even if it was relatively easy, it seemed much more likely that they were here already, living here, and somehow hiding. And then reading, the research took us to Admiral Byrd's diary and his encounter during Operation High Jump at the South Pole, where his armada was actually attacked by flying saucers. And then he wrote, he was muzzled later by Washington, because, when they debrief them, they muzzle them. And but except for his diary, where he describes a meeting with the people that live under the ice sheet, and we started on our premise that maybe that meeting really did occur, and that this was their way of reaching out to us. They tried apparently with the LA. The LA incident where
1942
a UFO was spotted off the coast, and because we had just been attacked by Japan, we were very jumpy, right? And so the military shot everything they had at it, and it was a bizarre incident where like 1 million people saw this UFO, and it was one of the biggest incidents that ever happened. And in fact, Admiral Byrd, it was referred to during his meeting with Admiral Byrd. They said, "We tried to, reach out to you guys, but you shot us. You shot at our craft, So we think that that's how they created a dialogue with Eisenhower, was through Admiral Byrd and his meeting with them.
What was that, Kevin? Sorry.
No, I didn't say anything. I was just agreeing with what you were saying. But the Admiral Byrd story has fascinated me for years.
Yes, me too. Believe me.
And that gets me on the track where I don't think that they're coming from distant planets or galaxies.
Right.
I think they're already here.
Yes.
And they're living in the ocean is what I think, because in his diary he said that they were coming out of the water.
Yes, well,
like you said, out of the ice sheet.
In fact, I got when I had my practice, one of my practices was in Vision Quest Metaphysical Bookstore, which was in Canoga Park, and they had this great section of all kinds of books, especially metaphysical books, and one of the books that I got there back in 1992, I think it was the Admiral Byrd Diary.
He has an actual book of the entire encounter.
One of the first releases of it, and for me, really, my real true interest, as far as like wanting to find out what was going on, happened about the age of 31 for me. I just had gotten tired of these weird things happening to me and my family, and just not having an answer. It just the family spirit guide was just not making sense to me anymore. It's just, it's like,
Yeah.
My mom did automatic writing, especially up until like her 50s. For sure, she was an automatic writer, which she learned from her mother and her mother's sister, and they learned that from their grandparents that were from the Newmans, that were from Germany. So my mom, I remember very clearly that when I was 9 years old, she was picking me up from elementary school in Woodland Hills, and she was crying, literally bawling. And I said, "Mommy, what's wrong?" She said, "My mother just died." Now, for some continuity here, I had spent the whole summer with my sister and brother in 1967 in Oldham, England, going to school. And then in 1968, my grandparents had come over and spent the summer with us in Southern California. So for her to tell me that her mother had just died, I knew that, for one thing, how does she know that? And I said, "Well, did you get a call?" She says, "No, I got this feeling, and I went and I was contacted by the family spirit guide, and I was told, and I wrote it down, that my mom had just died." And she told my dad. My dad said, "No, we haven't heard anything. We don't know."
Yeah, but a couple of days later,
Yeah,
official word arrived.
A day or two later, we got word that her mother had died. She had fallen going down a cobblestone driveway and broken her hip, and she died from the complications. Same thing happened when her father died about 10 years later.
And an uncle as well.
And then her uncle Clifford also. She was always notified. And I had seen some of these writings that she had done from time to time.
And watched her do it. She almost appeared to be in a trance.
Yeah, she went into a trance, and she would be contacted. She knew things about people that there's no way she should know. Okay. So I just grew up in a family that just kind of took this as a given. And you certainly don't tell your friends when you're a kid about these different things. They say either you're haunted, or you got ghosts, or you're crazy, or you're just weird. So this is kind of something we kind of kept in the family.
Steve, he played the accordion back then, so he was thinking, I'm already weird enough.
I'm a classical accordionist. I can play better than most people on the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I wish I could play that thing.
It's the real challenge is the left hand.
Yeah, but the buttons you can't see,
Yeah.
Right.
So, but yeah, in fact, I'm in the Philharmonic. We're doing one of the songs we're doing this time. We're doing a tribute to the 1980s. One of the songs we're doing is Conga, by Miami Sound Machine. Come on, everybody, do that conga, da 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 da. Mm-hmm. And believe me, the rhythm on that is like really tricky.
Yeah, really staccato, and he's puffing. He's like the bellows, puffing on the bellows.
Well, it has to do with like you have to you put your quarter notes into sixteenths, and then it's just. Let me put it this way: if you saw the music, you'd see why it's difficult to do.
Well,
so
back to the book.
Yeah. Back to the book, yeah.
So we were starting our research, and then another thing that we noticed was, the UFO, the abduction phenomenon, rather, was the theory was that the aliens are just curious about us, right? They just want some samples from a cross section of humanity just for scientific curiosity. But then what we discovered instead was that they're not taking a cross section of humanity. They find a person's DNA that they really like, and they will prey on that person for their whole lives. They'll just or until they become non-viable at, they say, age 40 or something like that. They'll take them again and again and again and again and again through their whole lives, and then they'll start taking their children and then their grandchildren. So it tends to be in a family. And it also seemed to me to be more like harvesting a product rather than scientific curiosity. Like they're taking so much DNA from just a very small sliver of the population of humanity. They prefer, it's almost entirely a Caucasian phenomenon, for one thing. It's about 95% Caucasian. And they like... people with green eyes are disproportionately often taken. People with Rh negative blood are disproportionately taken. People of Basque lineage, the Basque people happen to have a high incidence of Rh negative blood.
The highest on the planet.
So that consequently Basque people tend to be taken more than others. And it also seems to be a psychic connection. I've noticed that with a lot of the people I've interviewed, that they were a pretty psychic group. One woman who was abducted when she was young, she's 75 now, she does psychic healing, and she reports still being in contact with her gray alien that she calls Sumi. Like I said, but to me now it's more of a psychic connection than that she's physically being taken and removed. At her age, she's like 75 now. So
it's like a friend.
Yeah. So these are also things I'm posting on our Instagram page when people come to me and share their stories, as I was saying before. So I realized it was more like a farmer and his cow. I make that analogy in the book where, a farmer, his cow is out in the field eating grass and making milk, and he abducts it into the barn to remove the milk. And then he puts the cow back out into the field so it can eat more grass and make more milk, right? So but he's harvesting a product that he needs. And he's also protecting his cow from predators and stuff like that. So we find that there's sometimes these entities, they actually will protect the families that they have targeted for the genetic material that they want. There's been incidents in the family line where their spirit guide, who we now know is probably their gray alien handler or whatever, he's actually saved family members before, and we think that is is part of the protection that comes with the bad news, which is getting preyed upon and having your DNA taken.
A misidentified guardian angel type of thing. So.
And I think it seems like it's less for our benefit, what they do, than it is for their own agenda. They're acting in their own agenda. And now you have to ask yourselves, well, what do they need so much Caucasian DNA for? And then we have to look at their bizarre breeding program. As I was researching it, I said, God, it couldn't get any weirder. But, they literally are taking women and impregnating them. And then 4 months later, and putting them back. And then 4 months later, they take them again and remove the fetus.
Yeah.
And,
So efficiently that even the obstetricians that had done ultrasounds,
they say you've never been pregnant.
It looks like you were never pregnant at all.
Like it's vacuumed out,
right.
The entire womb.
Not just like a regular vacuum, but exactly like they took all the tissue.
They take the placenta and everything with it.
They take the fetus when it gets to be about 5 centimeters in size, like about the size of a baseball. And it's this interesting. And some of these women have this happening repeatedly.
Yes, and then sometimes later in life they're taken again and actually introduced to their hybrid alien offspring that have their eyes are too large and their cheekbones are pointy and their chins are pointy and they're very, very blonde. They're like almost fish. Their line is their hair is almost like fishing line. It's so light in color from the descriptions we have. And then we determined that we determined where they're taking the fetuses after, we believe. Have you ever heard of the Dulce papers?
Have not. No.
The Dulce Air Force Base is this underground base near in New Mexico under the Archuleta Mesa. And the Native Americans in that region, they see the mesa frequently opening up and light spilling out of it and UFOs going in and out of it. It's a hotbed of UFO activity. And this underground base, we've come to believe that 5 levels down is just humans, but the bottom 2 levels, the 6 and 7, are alien/human military base. And one of the security guards, this was years ago, he went down to the lower levels where he wasn't supposed to go, but curiosity drove him to the lower levels. And what he found was hundreds of these vats, and like cloning vats, like that we see in movies and stuff, but literally these vats, and then inside the vats they were growing like human alien hybrid beings. So now we know what they're doing and we know where they're taking them. And we try to extrapolate based on what they're doing a why. And I'm thinking it's either integration or infiltration, I believe. I think they're infiltrating our species in order to try and get us to give up our nukes from the inside out. That's their main thing that they want right now. They didn't get it with the Eisenhower Agreement. They wanted us to denuclearize, and we just refused to do it. And now they're dogging our military everywhere we go out.
According to Graves and Fravor and Grush during the summertime disclosures.
The hearings during the summer in the Congress.
They're saying literally that every time that there's anything to do with the nukes, whether it be submarines or aircraft carrier groups, that the UFOs show up every single time. When we're saying that the 10,000 times a year, they're saying, no, it's every single time. And most of them don't get reported.
Not through the military,
Not because they're afraid of
shy
losing.
About reporting.
They're afraid of losing their career. So really, and it's not just the United States, it's the Soviets, it's the Chinese. So really, the sightings are really probably closer to 100 to 200,000 times a year.
They're monitoring
realistically.
Yeah, they're monitoring our nuclear weapons everywhere they go, and I think it's because they live here with us. They have their butt is on the line too if we blow up the whole world, right?
They have a lot of skin in the game. They have a lot of skin in the game.
Yeah, they do.
And like you said, you see them coming up out of the oceans. You see them coming up out of lakes. They're coming up out of mountains, out of mesas, out of ridges. They're here in underground bases, in underground cities.
Whole complexes, yes.
And under the ice sheet of Antarctica as well.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now, there's one question that I wanted to ask too. I'll just ask now. So there's these sightings of these giants. Now, do you think those are alien species of some kind, or?
It's difficult to surmise, but
giants.
Yeah, the giants. We have a whole chapter about them in our book.
Okay.
It's the way I think it might be related to the whole thing is because of the way the government has suppressed it. They essentially whenever a giant skeleton would be discovered, or several giant skeletons or whatever, the government would show up, collect everything, and disappear it. So it's definitely part of the entire cover-up. I just don't know exactly how. Are they skeletons of the the Nordics, who are pretty tall, but they're not really reported as being that tall. So
there are a few skulls that are actually legitimate that show there's absolutely no sagittal suture. The elongated skulls.
Yeah.
Some of them can be definitely attributed to the binding process that people
the head
are
wrapping
doing
thing
to kind of emulate the gods. So those are fake. But the ones that have absolutely no sagittal suture, that that basically the brain capacity is more than ours, about by 20%. So they you have to look as far as like the total amount of possibly more psychic or different, definitely the other abilities as far as that we don't currently have. Plus, when you look back 13,000 years ago, which is also integral to our book, we find that around that time there was a genetic bottleneck that took place where the human race, Homo sapiens sapiens, we were reduced down to about 10,000 total population base at one point, which means that the 8 billion people we have right now have been basically regenerated from that 10,000. So there was, when you look at it genetically speaking, there's a lot of stuff that was lost in the translation. If you only have a base of 10,000 versus, let's say, 100,000 or 200,000, there may be certain traits that you're going to lose. And so
we surmised that that this population bottleneck was caused by a meteor impact or an asteroid impact And my research was into this like about 25 years ago. I was looking into this. What happened is that 13,000 years ago, the mammoth and the mastodon and the woolly mammoth and the saber-toothed cat and the dire wolf, the American camel, the American horse, a lot of species of animal were wiped out all at the same time. And the
Clovis people, too.
Along with the Clovis people of North America. And in 13,000-year-old soil, they discovered nanodiamonds. And nanodiamonds form in no other way than a celestial impact. An asteroid or a meteor brings dust with it when it comes into our atmosphere, and this dust superheats and becomes these little tiny round diamonds called nanodiamonds. And in 13,000-year-old soil, they found a high concentration of nanodiamonds.
In the Northern Hemisphere.
In the North American hemisphere. And so they knew they were looking for an asteroid or a meteor impact crater, and because of how far north the nanodiamonds were at high concentration, they surmised that it was under the ice sheet somewhere. And then sure enough, in 2016, the ice sheet has receded enough that the Hiawatha asteroid impact crater has been discovered under the Hiawatha Glacier in northern Greenland, proving that 13,000 years ago we were impacted by a big asteroid that would have caused tsunamis all worldwide of 1,000-foot high. And we believe that maybe even higher because we think a lithospheric shift may have occurred at the same time. They say the last lithospheric shift, where moving of the pole, happened between 18 and 12,000 years ago, and that our asteroid impact of 13,000 years ago is right in the window of opportunity there. So if that happened as well, then now we're talking about tsunamis that are 2,000 foot high. It basically would have scraped humanity off the surface of the world, and any technology that we had would have been lost to the tsunami.
Yeah, many people have heard about the mammoths still being found in Siberia. That at least in 1799 they were finding mammoths that were completely intact, that were frozen,
like flash frozen.
That were flash frozen, that still had undigested food in their stomachs and in their mouths, and then the 90-foot fruit trees that still had the fruit on them. So we know that a flash freeze occurred, and now we know.
Yeah.
See, we had the dead body, okay, but we needed the murder weapon.
Yeah,
so
and that was finally found.
The murder weapon. Once we found that, yes, that a meteor or an asteroid came through at 13,000 years and threw us back into an almost 1,100 year
climate catastrophe.
Right.
Where
so
we
know when it happened. We know how it happened. And that explains exactly. I was thinking back 40 years ago that it must have been a comet impact or something like that.
Yeah, because of the flood myths.
Because it didn't make any sense that these full beings were being found that that still have food in their system.
In their mouths. Yeah.
No, they didn't die slowly. They died immediately.
And then the fruit trees are actually the most telling thing, I believe, because anyone who's had a fruit crop exposed to a sudden frost knows that the tree will abandon the crop and drop all the fruit off of it to
save itself,
to survive so the tree will survive. And for the fruit to actually be frozen on the tree, it must have been an immediate flash freezing event. And now we know that that's precisely what it was, because the amount of ice vaporized by this asteroid would have been 1,500 gigatons. And a gigaton is, I think, 100 billion tons, so that's 1,500 of those, suddenly up is water vapor up in the sky.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
The torrential rains, the myth of, the story of Noah, he's talking about 40 days and 40 nights, right? You could probably add a zero to that number, more like 400 straight days of solid rain, and torrential rains. And that explained the flood myths, because these flood myths that have been discovered, there's 1,200 separate cultures all over the world that have a flood inundation myth in their most ancient lore going back as far as their memories, their racial memories go.
And they all have one thing in common. They have foreknowledge.
Yeah, they were always warned. The story is always, it sounds very much the same from one instance to the next, where God warned us that we had to build a boat, or God warned us to go to high ground, or God warned us to dig underground somewhere, right? And so we believe that this was the separation point between the human race, separated us into two camps. People that survived the cataclysm with their knowledge and technology intact, and the rest of us poor schmucks on the surface that were almost wiped out to a man and thrown back into the Stone Age after the cataclysm. And we think we were actually fairly advanced when the Hiawatha hit, because, human race has been on the planet, the Homo sapiens sapien, you and I, we've been on the planet for at least 120,000 years. And mainstream archaeology would have you believe that we sat around for 107,000 years without making any advancement.
Correct.
And it didn't even invent the house or the
or the wheel
or the wheel or anything.
No, we're very curious.
That makes no sense.
We
right?
make terrible slaves. We're very curious. We're
good or bad, the human race, we are an industrious, curious, busy bunch.
Inventive too.
Yeah, inventive people. We're not going to sit around stagnant for that long and then suddenly get smart 13,000 years ago. And begin advancing.
Brings up, it makes me think of Tartaria. Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, that's the underworld. It's one of the underworld stories, right?
Yeah, where we had advanced, so to actually maybe even better to the way than we are now.
Right, like Atlantis, stories of Atlantis, and
Lemuria.
Yeah, that.
And we think,
all that stuff.
We think it's us that built the stuff on Mars, and on the other side of the moon, and the tower on Phobos, the moon of Mars. They found a tower on it, and they were just about to get good photos of it when the probe was destroyed. So we know that they're out and about in our solar system, and probably some of them survived the cataclysm on bases that we had around the solar system, and also on the other side of our moon. I think there's structures that have been discovered on the moon.
We know that they can breed with us. We know that they have an interest in our DNA. In fact, what we also found too, a couple things, which I'll mention here quick. In one of our chapters, we found out just how frequently these L events, extinction level events or near extinction level events occur. They happen a lot more frequently than most people realize. So if you are advanced enough to where you knew that hey, if you're going to ride this out, you might as well, if you have the technology, you build something underground, build cities, because they're impervious to earthquakes. They're impervious to most cataclysmic impacts.
Right. They don't have to worry about hurricanes or tornadoes or floods or lightning or lithospheric shifts or, any of that stuff in these secure underground, well, let's call them arcs, because I think that's the word we use in our book to describe them. It's kind of like that movie Deep Impact. They were faced with the same catastrophe coming, right? We've got an asteroid going to wipe us out. What do we do? Well, the solution in the movie was to, blow up the asteroid. But plan B, the less Hollywood plan, was to dig these deep underground arcs and bring your technology with you and bring your knowledge with you. And then unfortunately they could only put down I think 50,000 people or whatever. So only the cream of the crop of humanity would have been put down in these arcs, and the rest of us poor schmoes, just had to ride it out in a boat. Hopefully,
we're doing a similar thing now. We're doing the world seed banks and that kind of stuff in Norway and different areas where we're basically storing as much as we can. So in case we do. Because we everybody knows that we're losing many species every day,
Right.
and it's not going to get any better in the near future. So,
and the other thing that we points to this race of us being intelligent, higher, pretty high intelligence before Hiawatha. The stories about Atlantis, and we really like the theory that it's been discovered in Doñana bird sanctuary, just up the coast of Spain from the Rock of Gibraltar. And we like this theory. First, they've done ground penetrating radar and found concentric rings inside on an island in the mouth of this big river delta. And just outside of the mouth of that river delta on the ocean floor is all this stone debris that looks like a city had been dragged out into the ocean from a tsunami or something. And if we like this theory also because it's right where Plato said it was supposed to be, right? Just right outside it's right supposed to be right next to
Gibraltar, yeah.
They called it the Pillar of Hercules, but
Yes.
that was their name for the rock, Gibraltar Strait back then. So it's right there, and whether it was really there or not, we don't know. But if it was there, we do know it was ground zero for the tsunami that would have dumped out of the Hiawatha into the Labrador Sea of the North Atlantic. The tsunami would have hit the coast of Europe that would have been the worst hit. That and the North American continent.
Yes.
We think it flooded the plains. That's why all the plains animals died.
Some of them survived for a little bit longer. The giant ground sloth.
Yeah, but that's because there was
California.
Populations in California.
I think the Sierra Nevadas kind of saved them there.
But the woolly mammoth, the mastodon, all these things, they died out because they were on the plains at low elevation, and they became swamped. And then Yellowstone is a sanctuary of animals. And it would have been high enough ground where it would have been safe. And we think the entire plains repopulated from the animals that survived in Yellowstone. That's why the buffalo was in herds of millions of
50
them.
million at one point.
because it basically filled a huge niche that had been left vacant by the cataclysm. There was no plains animals eating all this lovely grass. So.
Yeah, almost no predators too.
Yeah, pretty much wiped out.
Yeah. Have you guys heard that they are looking to reintroduce the woolly mammoth to the Alaskan wilderness in 2027?
I think they were going to start with the mastodon, though, weren't they? Or was it they're going to go straight to the woolly mammoth?
I don't know. It was one of them. I remember that, and I was just like, "What?"
Yeah, why not? You can clone it, and because they can get DNA out of them frozen popsicles.
They found the whole preserved skeleton with blood of a baby with blood and everything like that. The tissue, the mitochondrial DNA plus the the whole thing with blood. So yeah, they're thinking about
they would have to gestate in an elephant, obviously.
Yeah, using an elephant, and there's reasons because of the what do you call it, the permafrost and all the methane that's being released because the planet is warming. So
as the Arctic tundra begins to defrost, there's a lot of methane trapped in the permafrost there, and as it releases, of course, it's going to compound global warming. So they're thinking, well, the woolly mammoth used to handle eating millions of tons of grass every year. Maybe we can bring those guys back.
That's funny. I would be interested if they are able to bring it back completely. I'd love to see one, but at the same time, I don't know. It feels surreal.
Well, we won't have a viable egg from the mammoths. So what they'll do is they'll take an egg from the elephant and neutralize its DNA and then insert the DNA into it.
Yeah, inject the genetic material, right. Basically fertilize the elephant's egg. Yeah, so it'll be kind of like a hybrid again, sort of. But you know what? They're also talking about bringing back the dodo bird too, which I think that's kind of
that'd be cool.
I heard that too. I was like, what?
Because it's our fault that it's gone. We're the ones that brought. I think we brought rats to that island, and of course they they're helpless because they
Yeah.
can't fly, and so as soon as we brought a predator to the island, that was the end of them.
Yeah.
Welcome to Primetime Crime Podcast. I am your host, Kylie, and in this podcast, we are going to deep dive into some lesser known unsolved true crime cases, from missing persons to unsolved homicides. This is the place where we are going to unpack it all, research it all, talk about it all, and try to bring justice to these families after all of these years. We are going to take it one story at a time, one case at a time, and hopefully justice will be ours.
Yeah, that's it. That's interesting.
So it's our fault. So we should fix that one if we can.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, that one too.
I agree. Yeah. So what was the so what is the difference between a USO and a UFO? Is it because, right, you said USO?
Yes, underwater submerged object or underwater.
Okay, all right, that's what
unidentified submerged object.
Unidentified submerged.
And they're changing UFO to UAP because it's unidentified aerial phenomenon. And the USO I still think is what they're using for underwater phenomenon. And, we have a little bit of data. One of the big problems with digging up data was the fact that the government is fighting me tooth and nail every step of the way for it. We have to
Are they really?
We have to get whistleblower testimony and, and they've been sitting on, we have to do FOIA requests to try and get them to give us information.
The Freedom of Information Act. That's why I think like a lot of the stuff is being farmed out to people like Bigelow Aerospace.
The reverse engineering of the alien craft.
They're not. They don't come under the auspices of the Freedom of Information Act.
Because
so
the
they
private
can actually
sector,
hide.
So.
They can actually hide stuff more easily that way with government contractors.
Right.
It's when you really look at this, basically the raw data as far as the timing when things happened toward the end of World War II. That's when the Foo Fighters started showing up. The Germans thought they were ours. We thought they were the Germans. The Japanese didn't know what to think. The Brits were seeing them. This is all during the time when we were developing heavy water. And then, of course, there was the Hiroshima and Nagasaki explosions.
And that very much alarmed them. And UFOs began turning up at all our nuclear facilities, our nuclear research facilities, the Air Force bases that were where the nuclear bombs had been launched. The planes came from. That was the Roswell. The 509th Airborne delivered the bombs, the nuclear bombs.
To the Enola Gay.
And they were stationed at Roswell. So we think that's so they were keeping tabs at Roswell. Wow. We know about the incident at Malmstrom in Nevada where the UFO.
No, it's in Montana.
Montana rather, where the UFO turned off like 10 nuclear took 10 nuclear warheads offline.
Yeah, deactivated 10 ICBMs.
I think that was just to show us that they can, and that was pushing trying to push their please denuclearize agenda, that way. And we still think that's their main thrust. The main thing that they're after is that,
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing too.
Right.
Is that they don't like the nuclear stuff now. Leslie, did your second time seeing a UFO? Did you tell that story yet?
No,
no,
we didn't. Saw it together. Just down here in Desert Hot Springs, which is just a little bit south of where we first saw our other one, just on the other side of the mountain, in fact. So we looked up in the sky, and in the western sky, and this white light again was flying in ways that can't be explained. You know how when our aircraft want to make a U-turn, we have to literally make it a shape of a U, like bank around slowly. Yeah. And this craft could turn on a V at a point and make a V angular turn without slowing down at all. And then it would stop and hover. and then zigzag around the sky again. And then finally, just like the last one that we'd seen, it shot to the north and gone over the mountains in just less than a second.
Yeah, to me, it was like
Wow.
Our backyard is tiny. Okay, so our view of the night sky is very tiny.
Yeah.
So this happened in late-ish October of 2021, was it? 2021?
2020, my darling.
2020, okay. And so we went out at 9:30 at night. It was totally dark, and just to kind of look at the backyard, and there it was. It's almost like saying, "Hey, hi,
Leslie and Stephen.
we know where you've moved to. We know where you moved to because it was such a small area." And this one was much brighter, and it was, of course, it was soundless, but it was much brighter than the one that Leslie and I had first seen together. And it was truly amazing. To me, it was maybe the most amazing one that I've ever seen. I have a different remembrance of it, but it was, to me, it was very visual, and I just had wished I had a camera with me.
I know.
But it was amazing. First, we're trying to think it's an airplane, it's a drone, it's something like that, it's a firework, but it absolutely was not. And it was literally like saying, "Hey, you guys have just moved down here from your other house. We know where you are." So to me, that's the way I look at it.
And then that was the year I really started doing our research in earnest, and we wrote the book through most of 2022 and published last year. We're still promoting the book. It's a pretty radical theory. A lot of theories out there now are talking about that we are part of a federation of planets, and that we get to tag along and ride along with them. But we think this is just more lies that are being orchestrated. And the reason is because it smacks of what we want to hear isms. We would love it for it to be true, right?
Right.
We get to travel the galaxy.
The Captain
like
Picard,
Star Trek,
is there.
Nobody wants it more than I do. I assure you, I would love for that to be true. And just right there made me suspicious of it.
Yeah, it's especially too because two of these there's supposed to be like 4 starships, intergalactic starships
that we participate
with on, and we've been to 26 different solar systems, Pyceon and Rigel, and just happens to be that 2 of these starships since 2003 that we've been doing this, 2 of them have been named after 2 of the original members of the Majestic 12.
Yeah, so why would these alien races name 2 of their spaceships after 2 1947 generals that were with Project Blue Book? It seemed far-fetched to me, and kind of like an inside joke almost.
It's ridiculous.
But when our theories, just good old rocketry is being used. You don't need to have faster than light travel. You don't need to have interdimensions theory to be correct. You don't need to have a wormhole. You don't need to have time travel or any of these theoretical sciences involved. Our theories, they're used in the old days. These beings used good old-fashioned rocketry.
It's all throughout the Bible.
Yeah,
it came down in fiery chariots.
Right, Ezekiel says a fiery chariot came down from the sky. This sounds like rocketry, right? Like a rocket is landing.
Chinese talk about it too. The Yellow Emperor.
Yeah, the dragon in the sky going overhead is because of flaming dragon. But now we know that they're using nuclear power instead, because sometimes UFO witnesses that get too close actually suffer electromagnetic radiation burns. So they've switched, and we know that when we see like for instance the Tic Tac and the Go Fast and the gimbals, these objects do not have exhaust like a rocket would have. So we believe this was during the biblical years, thousands of years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or however long that they were using rocketry, and then eventually switched to nuclear
they've
power.
improved, and we also believe too they have a way of like manipulating matter, at least temporarily.
Right, and that I think that would look like portal travel. Like, let's say they're outside your house and they negate your wall temporarily. They make matter not solid, and they can walk through your wall. And we hear a lot of that. We hear about people, they're walking through the wall, they're coming down through the ceiling, they're coming up through the floor. And also we hear about holes opening on the side of mountains, and
Yeah,
and
that's
stuff flying in and out of them.
a lot lately.
Yeah, the Modoc
Yeah.
Indians talk a lot about
Yeah.
that with Mount Shasta.
Shasta especially, and and the Archuleta Mesa, as I was telling you before.
Duck blinds.
And also, I think that's been
Yeah.
there's also maybe a base off Skinwalker Ranch, and that they are kind of poking the bee's nest to get the reactions from the base that's situated
That's why
near
they're
them.
always shooting off rockets all the time. Well, maybe we'll set up a bigger rocket this time and see what happens.
Those guys are fun. They just love having rockets. They're.
Yeah.
But they have a lot of. I mean, I think their work is important. They're doing a lot of trying to
Oh, yeah, for
understand the
sure.
technology. Basically, in my mind, I don't bother with trying to understand their technology. I feel like an ape, poking at a cell phone or something. I just figure it's more advanced than ours. We believe it's about 13,000 years more advanced than ours because they didn't lose their technology like we did. So they've just
Yeah.
had 13,000 years of advancement ahead of us, and we think they were ahead of us to start. So that's
Yeah.
why their technology is so much superior to ours. Obviously they have some sort of inertial dampening field so that they can travel 20,000 miles an hour at a
Right.
takeoff.
They've advanced themselves, of course.
Some sort of gravity canceling device that Bob Lazar talked about.
And we know for a fact that they knew how to manipulate rocks and melt rocks and do stuff like that because of all the
Right.
stuff they left behind, like Sacsayhuaman, which is basically earthquake proof, and Pumapunku. We know that they were able to melt metal, and they had literally on-site blast furnaces and whatever where they could basically see the way, because I did so much concrete work in my life. When I look at things like Pumapunku, it looks, because they're so uniform.
Those giant H blocks, are
the giant H blocks,
identical.
they look like they're literally like cinder blocks that we pour ourselves today. They were basically
Maybe punched
they're
out of a
prefabbed.
mold or something.
They were
yeah.
prefabbed, and then we know on you look on the undersides that there are these clamps that they had that they poured little metal. They liquefied metal that was a combination of iron and a couple other things, and it's literally okay.
It's earthquake proof. That's why they're still standing.
Okay, so they had a plan, and it wasn't anything that was just using bronze tools.
Right.
And these things were built at 2,000 feet above the tree line. So these things look like they were prefab. They said in the legends that these things, that they did that thing Pumapunku like in a week.
Right.
It's like, yeah, we know that they can manipulate rock for sure.
See, we think that's one of the few things that survived Hiawatha was some of these megalithic cities of built with stones that are 200 tons.
Some are 200, yeah.
Also out of andesite, which is harder than granite. It's as hard as the hardest granite.
7 on the Mohs scale.
And they're making these incredibly detailed inner bevel cuts on these things that are still sharp after thousands of years. And, a lot of these sites, mainstream archaeology is attributing to the wrong people. Like, for instance,
the Incas.
They're attributing all the big structures of the Andes, the Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and Pumapunku. They're attributing it to the Inca. And these people were bronze tool users. You can't cut andesite with bronze, I mean, you could whack it all day with a bronze tool and you'll just damage the tool, And then they finally found some proof, though, that underneath one of the pyramids cities it was Karl Supe, they discovered some grass woven netting. And they were able to carbon date that netting to 5,000 years ago. And the Inca were, around 1400s
they weren't even
1500s.
around, yeah.
So this is thousands of years before the Inca. There was a unknown pyramid building culture in Peru 5,000 years ago, making these, and we know nothing about it. There's zero. We have zero knowledge except ancient lore from the Native Americans. I mean, the natives from the area. You know,
Right.
they have these stories of it being built to a sound of a horn in a single day, and all the blocks were just floated into place, levitated into place.
It goes on and on, you know.
But so we have, basically we have no idea who these people are, and but it is showing that the Inca were not the ones building with these 200-ton blocks or these 100-ton blocks or 50-ton blocks. It's ridiculous,
It's like, it's really funny, really quickly here before the end, but like when the Spanish showed up in was it Central America?
Mexico.
Yeah, the Yucatan Peninsula.
Oh, the Yucatan.
They were asking, say, what is this place,
Yeah.
And the natives were basically saying,
Yucatan.
what do you want?
Yucatan. It means what do you want?
Yeah. So the Yucatan means it's the what do you want peninsula.
It's the what do you want.
Yeah, they're asking the question. Hey, what are you here for? What do you want? What are you asking? The what do you want peninsula.
I hope that's true, and it's not like some urban legend that went around.
I looked it up.
I know, but you never know. Urban legends can get can end up in real research sometimes.
For sure. For sure. It's funny because I've never I've always thought it was weird. The pyramids were weird to begin with.
Yeah, and those were
what
copper.
I mean? I was like, there's no way
they're being attributed to copper tool users. That's even worse than bronze, and the sandstone, you can cut it. The sandstone blocks you can cut with copper tools, but not the entire inner chamber of the big chamber inside the pyramid. It's all lined with rose quartz that comes from 600 miles downriver, and somehow they floated this granite and cut it to just machine perfection, machine incrementally measurable perfection. That each edge is still so sharp you could almost cut yourself on it, and the plane of the thing is completely smooth.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was obvious that the people that they're attributing this structure to just couldn't have done it.
No, you got to.
I remember asking questions when.
Sorry, what?
Sorry.
What'd you say?
I was just gonna say I remember in elementary school I was asking my teacher these questions, and she was just like, what this is just what happened. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but how did they get them there? Like, there's perfectly these huge rocks. I was like, you're telling me? I was like, we can barely even do that now.
And they're talking.
Our machines will fall over sometimes.
And we can't.
You know what I mean?
Can't do it with, exactly the same because we can't move those kind of blocks without crane marks. And there are no crane marks on the stones in the Great Pyramid. And there's 2.3 million of them. It's supposed to have been built in like 20 years or something for this pharaoh. And of course, he was never buried in it because they're not tombs. But
no, they're not.
They would have had to put in 20 years. They would have had to put a block in place like every 14 seconds or something like that. It's ridiculous.
I make the joke, that as far as like there being tombs, it'll be the equivalent of putting a neon sign on top and saying "Eat it, Joe's, get it here."
Right.
Here's where all my treasures buried.
Yeah, here I am. Here's my corpse. Please steal me.
Please steal me.
And we know from it's absurd for anyone who's studied Egyptian culture, ancient culture of that time. They were terrified of grave robbers and having their tombs discovered, right? So they would bury themselves in the most secretive way they could, and sometimes hiding them for a very long time because they were very afraid of people finding their tomb and defiling it. And so much so that the idea of them burying themselves in the most conspicuous structure in the world, it just seems like he said, it's like putting a neon sign outside and saying,
"Get it here,
please steal me my stuff,"
Yeah. So before we wrap it up, I was wondering, Stephen, Do you still get visited to this day?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. But like I said, I think it's more on the astral plane or the psychic plane
Well,
somehow.
I've had a couple things in the past 2 or 3 months that were very odd. I woke up. I was in the back bedroom, and I was sleeping on my back, and I woke up, and I definitely was awake. I was alert. It was dark, but there was this large black being that had these golden eyes that was just looking at me, and I decided to ask it, what do you want from me? What do you want? And I've heard from different people that you shouldn't say that, but it was just there, and I decided to confront it. I had another thing a few weeks after that where I was in the bed, and I just gotten in. I felt like somebody got into the bed right next to me,
and it wasn't me.
And I knew it wasn't. I knew it wasn't Leslie. So I've had these things happen to me so frequently. So I said, "Okay, what do you want?" And didn't say anything. So I decided just to ignore it. So I rolled over on my left side and went to sleep. Woke up several hours later. I was back on my back, and I was going to get out of bed just to go to the bathroom, and this voice on my right ear sounded slightly Asian. A female Asian said, "Husband." And Leslie has never called me that. Number one, she wasn't in bed.
I was in the living room. I fell asleep on the comfy chair.
Yeah. So I still get my dreams are extremely. My dreams on my astral work they usually happen about a week before the full moon, and I write some of them down.
And frequently the winter. Seems like the winter is more active time for the family.
Yeah.
But I still have things happening to me. I got out of my body accidentally about a month and a half ago. I'm 250 pounds, so I don't just like jump out of bed, right? So it's like 5 o'clock in the morning. I wanted to go pee, and so I was awake, and I just jumped up and just walked over to the door, like I don't do because I'm 250 pounds, and I started tugging on the door that was closed and said, "How come I can't open this?"
It wouldn't open because he forgot his body and left it in bed.
And so I thought, uh-oh. So I turned around, I went back to my body, I looked at myself, and I started touching myself, said, "Oh no, did I just die?" And didn't realize it. And so I said, "Oh no, it looks like I'm still alive." So I just got back in my body, and then I got up the normal way. But like I say, this stuff is still happening to me to this day.
And I say that it's in the astral realm because when Stephen and I got together, we were in our early 30s, and we started doing some of this Kundalini energy raising stuff I was talking about.
And I taught her Tai Chi too.
Yeah, and we were doing the Tai Chi, and we started studying with this church that was helping us with it, and they were taking us on guided meditations and lectures and teaching us how to do chanting to open our various different chakras.
And the laws of karma.
And the laws of karma and stuff like that. So as we were doing these practices, Stephen was able to astral project from pretty young in life. So for him, it was kind of just relearning it. But for me, it was a new experience. And the first time you get out of your body, it's really exciting. I did the exercises like they told us, and I popped out of my body, and I was up near the ceiling looking at the cottage cheese ceiling, and I was so surprised that I went, "Wow!" And I slammed back into my body so hard I jumped in the bed, and I learned over time that it's actually harder to stay. It's kind of hard for beginners to stay out of their body. And that you're safe as long there's this supposedly this called the silver thread or something like that.
Yeah, the silver cord.
The silver cord connecting the astral body and the physical body, and as long as the body is still alive, that cord keeps tabs on the astral body. Yeah, and I enjoyed astral projection. I had fun with it. I went scuba diving in my astral body. No drowning, no sharks.
She went to Egypt a couple times.
And I flew to Egypt one time, and then, but with Stephen, and I think it's because of this presence, this constant presence in his life, that As soon as he got onto the other side in the astral realm, he started being harassed. He'd have things attack him, or he would suddenly feel like he was suffocating. And it would devolve into like a nightmarish kind of
some of the stories are in the book. There was one in particular where Leslie went out to it was daytime. It was like maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, and she went out to go make some coffee and bring breakfast in bed. And I was like starting to drift off back to go to sleep, and then Leslie came in, but I thought it was Leslie, but it looked exactly like Leslie. Opened the door, and it turned into like this huge dragon. And that's tried to basically strangle me and kill me, and then the real Leslie came
Then I walked in,
and the dragon disappeared, and I it was like,
and he looked at me with this horror expression, like I was going to attack him or something.
Yeah, she'll never forget that, because I was literally being attacked by this fake Leslie. And another time I escaped to the moon. In an astral thing to avoid this being that was
chasing
me, and I found this coffin. I got into this coffin, and then I was sexually raped.
Sodomized in this coffin.
In this coffin.
And it reminded me of the anal probe thing that they talk about.
Yeah.
And I think that may be one of his experiences in these blackout times. And that's why it's like that.
I don't usually talk about it, but it was it's not all the time that they're really bad experiences, but the majority seem to be scary for me.
And he would get this feeling of suffocation and have to get back into his body because he felt like he couldn't breathe somehow. So astral projection for me, like, it was fun, and for Stephen it wasn't. But then I started getting, like I said before, these voices that I would hear right behind me, and the whole thing just creeped me out enough to where I gave it all up. But
I don't blame you.
But somehow this phenomenon is linked to the astral realm as well. And I'm really not quite sure how. But like I said, for instance, the human being, we have the ability to read each other's minds to a certain extent. It's like it is a human attribute, but it's atrophied in us. And we think it has not atrophied in our UFO driving cousins, because in them, we know that they always communicate with their abductees via telepathy. They don't speak to them. They just speak to them in their minds. And we think that that's further evidence that they're related to us. Also, when they're impregnating women, sometimes it's in vitro, but frequently it's just sex. And if they're having sex with us and just making us pregnant that way, I think that's proof that they are the same species as we are. Maybe mutated, maybe changed from living underground for thousands of years, but still able to breed with us.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
That is interesting. But so the last question that I like to ask everybody is, are you guys finding fulfillment in everything that you're doing right now?
Well, writing the book was a journey, and I have enjoyed it. I didn't realize that you have to market it as almost as many hours as it took to write it. And so that's, we're still talking about it with people. And I think we have kind of a revolutionary theory, and it's kind of hard to come in on, an established idea and break into it with new ideas and new theories. But our theories, we believe, fit the facts. And that when your theories fit the facts, you can't completely discount it. It has to be considered as a possibility.
Absolutely.
Now, if you're talking about completely fulfilled, we'd love to be millionaires, but we're not even close to that. We haven't even made back what we put under the book yet.
Yeah, so. We still haven't broken even, but it's a
lot more expensive than we thought. And
it looks like, the way you have to kind of keep growing your brand forever, and then after maybe book 3, you start to maybe be in the black financially. But it's been a wonderful experience as far as I'm meeting so many people that have the same experiences as we do. And it's remarkably the same from experience to experience to experience. The abduction phenomenon is frequently just remarkably the same thing. And it's funny because modern science keeps changing their theory of what's happening. They're changing the diagnosis from one condition to another condition to another condition, but the phenomenon itself doesn't change, just the way people look at it.
Yeah, different terminology. That's really what it is.
Yeah,
at least the men in black haven't shown up at our door yet.
Yeah, they haven't kicked in the
door,
thing. You know.
Not yet.
And said,
they might flashy thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, we want you. They hold a gun to your head and say, "Okay, we want you to refute all your statements in your book." You know.
That's how we end our book, actually, too.
Right. It's like, hopefully that won't happen.
Yeah. That's funny.
Don't give away the ending.
Oh man.
No.
So can we again just say show people it's Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw, and it's available on Amazon and Ingram, and we have a website at whotheyarebook.com, and our Instagram page is we're trying to make it very interesting. It's at leslie.shaw.author.
Correct.
Awesome stuff, guys. I really enjoyed well, I mainly just listened to you talk, so this was pretty cool for me. It was amazing. I mean, you answered like pretty much every question that I would have had as you were talking, and I love having those kind of conversations because not that because I don't want to participate, but because like it's just you already know like the questions that are going to come at you, so you just cover all the bases, and it's lovely listening to you. And
thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, I love your guys' thanks for coming, and I love your dynamic. You guys just seem very in love, and still to this day, so I enjoy that too.
And it's Valentine's Day too.
I love. Yep, happy Valentine's Day.
And out Valentine's to your listeners as well.
We first met each other on my 32nd birthday, July 28th, 1992.
Mm-hmm.
That was kind of interesting.
Oh, wow.
And then we got married on my birthday, which was also his father's birthday. That way he only has to remember one date per year, the anniversary and my birthday on the same day.
Talk about weirdnesses too. The only two men that Leslie says she ever fell in love with on sight were her ex-husband and me, and her ex-husband was born the exact same day, the same year, within 2 hours of me.
Yeah.
So we're both...
Whoa.
So, yeah. And my dad and Leslie were born May 26th. So.
Yeah, I really fall for those July 28th,
so
Leos.
You start to like factor in the coincidence type thing, whatever, and it kind of gets pretty weird.
Yeah. I don't understand astrology, and I'm not sure how much of it I believe, but it has to have something to it.
Well, because I did Chinese medicine for over 20 years, and Tai Chi. I always considered the moon phase calendar, which is the Chinese cycle based on the moon, which is the yin, and you combine that with the male, which is the yang, which is the solar cycle, which is the Western. So literally, like I'm a Leo rat. I'm not just a rat. I'm not just a Leo. I'm a Leo rat.
Yeah.
Which is different than like a Gemini rat. So
and I'm a Gemini pig.
See, she's a Gemini pig. So when you look at it, when you combine them together, the yin and the yang, it makes a hell of a lot more sense. And it really does, actually. It's really interesting when you combine them together. There is something to it, and put it that way.
Yeah.
For sure. I agree 100%. It's a little weird and sometimes gets a little confusing, but there's something definitely to
144 combinations.
I love your poster, by the way, Kevin. It's really cute back there. Stay weird.
Thank you. It's my favorite. Well, it's kind of like a tagline that I have that goes with the show. And I was just in Walmart with because my kids like to look at posters all the time, and we were looking at posters. I was like, "Hey, look at this thing." I was like, "I like that." I had to get it. I had to get it the minute I saw it.
It's definitely you and your show. It fits.
Thank you. I also did see Village of Mushroom People when I was a kid, so that also
interesting.
Like intrigued me.
Is that the one we saw in Svengoolie where they're?
No, you saw it when you were a kid. You saw. Did you see actually like in your room or something?
No, the movie.
Oh, it was out.
The movie.
It was no, it was literal. I like passed through a realm or something when I was like 10 years old, out in the woods with my sister.
Whoa.
And it was just like a little group, a little village of mushroom people, and they took my glasses off and told me I didn't need them, and then I went to the doctor's to check on my prescription, and my doctor said I didn't need glasses anymore.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, it's wild. Like, you probably know to this day that in Iceland, if they come across, like you're trying to put a road through where, the elves or the elven people live, that their equipment,
the fairy folk,
their equipment stops working no matter what they do. And so literally, almost everybody in Iceland believes in the fairy folk. And if you come across one of their villages, you have to go around it. They will not allow you to put anything through.
Yeah.
Move their rocks or move their wherever they're living. It just stops working.
It's nice. It's respectful.
It's very respectful. It's a known thing. It's really funny, but it's true.
It is. Well, guys,
thank you for having us.
That is the show. Yep. Thanks. Oh my God. Thank you guys. You guys were lovely. I am so grateful that you guys came on, and I hope your book does well. I'm gonna have to check it out too.
Thanks.
So
we
I'll
appreciate
be going to Amazon shortly.
All right.
And checking it out.
Cool.
But for everybody listening, I hope you guys check Leslie and Steven's book out, and check them out on their socials and show them some love. But if you like today's show, please like, follow, share, and subscribe. Leave a rating and review. And not only will it help this show, but it also help Leslie and Steven if for the specific episode.
Thank you.
So
Thank you, people.
merch.
Thanks.
Merch is where the weird ones are podcast.com. You get to the store if you're into that, and the Patreon is out. So Patreon weirdos only. And remember, everybody, question everything and stay weird.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.
Because in the end, none of us have very long on this earth. Life is fleeting. And if you're ever distressed, cast your eyes to the summer sky, when the stars are strung across the velvety night, and when a shooting star streaks through the blackness, turning night into day. Make a wish.